With the unfailing conviction that entertainment producers are plotting a reality where we all gain immortality, it seems they've decided our entertainment must beat us to the punch. Content should be ceaseless, unending, like a stubborn bout of hiccups. It should spew forth new additions and interpretations, tap dance onto new platforms while bear-hugging new communities and the latest political trends. That is, until its original identity is a mere rumor, an urban legend that's mostly forgotten. Today, there's more new Star Wars than there ever was old Star Wars. That's akin to saying there's more plastic than fish in the ocean. Shocking, and not really a good thing. I honestly don't know if Star Wars is bigger than ever or just spreading like a nasty rash. In this era, even the prequels have been re-evaluated. Thus, it's no surprise that the latest franchise offerings are wedging themselves into the cozy nooks of the older films. None of what comes out of the series anymore seems to be anything other than an attempt to draw in fresh fans, as if there are people still out in the world who hadn't heard of Star Wars and formed an opinion, just waiting for it to add one more gay character to the cast before they dip their toes in the water. In just a few years, Star Wars will be so desperate it'll be left subtitling its content for the uncontacted tribes of the Amazon. If you happen to find yourself in the unfortunate group of fans who already liked Star Wars before Disney's ownership, then you are no longer important. At this point, original fans are treated more like a managed opposition. They're expected to hate everything new that comes out of the series, but at least they still talk about it and give executives someone to point to when bad reviews come in. All this is a long-winded way of saying I think there's simply too much Star Wars these days. I don't think Disney should be treating Star Wars the same way it treats Marvel. What was a fantastical universe far, far away now feels very small and very close. It's become increasingly difficult to tell which medium the series actually excels at anymore, dipping its toes into every major entertainment industry: movies, comics, novels, toys, streaming TV, anime, and video games. Reviewing the historical data suggests that video games might be the last refuge of enjoyable Star Wars experiences, though it's not for want of trying. Recall that EA held Star Wars hostage for a decade, releasing 2 underwhelming Battlefront games before being practically strong-armed into delivering something slightly more inspired: Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, a title as catchy as an accountant's spreadsheet, offering a tolerable Souls-like experience in Star Wars. Sure, it was like a toddler's first swim lesson version. Occasionally there'd be an uncomfortable squeeze or an unexpected dunk. It wasn't perfect, but it carried. Once again, this offering is situated in the gray area between episodes 3 and 4, meaning nothing of any consequence can be accomplished by the heroes who are destined to disappear faster than a Jedi's body when they croak, so they get to run around having whatever inconsequential adventures they want until then. Because let's face it, their mere existence past a certain point in time will just highlight their apparent sloth while Luke single-handedly dismantles the Empire. The game begins with Cal Kestis being brought in cuffs to Coruscant by bounty hunters for a senator wanting to outmaneuver Darth Vader's Inquisition, and bringing the captive to Coruscant is like trying to lay low from your bank heist by hiding on Wall Street.
A Jedi? We brought him in alive.
The senator is expecting us.
Is it standard procedure to bring a dangerous prisoner who can mind control you or crush your throat with a thought for a social call with a galactic senator? You would think he'd delegate the questioning to a less squishy and more expendable underling.
We'll stay here.
That wasn't the deal.
Deals change.
Not this one. I come along or we walk.
Only you. The others must wait.
I expect bounty hunters to play hardball over their bounty, but once you've brought a Jedi to Coruscant, you don't have any leverage left. You're not leaving with him over a disagreement of the terms.
The renegade Jedi Cal Kestis. You have made quite a name for yourself.
Cal achieved such infamy that by the time of episode 4, he is a complete unknown to the Resistance.
Before I deliver you to the Emperor, you will lead me to the remaining Jedi.
The senator is so desperate to climb the career ladder that he wants to personally gift wrap Cal for the Emperor and uncover the remaining Jedi. But what's the career ladder in the Empire for a galactic senator? It's not like Palpatine is looking for an intern. Cal's planning is so masterful that he apparently knew the senator would threaten him with his own lightsaber if his team posing as bounty hunters brought him with them, so he had the foresight to send BD ahead with the remote to shut it off. It's like predicting the weather a year in advance.
Did you really think you could capture me? You've got classified military intel stored on your yacht, and you just brought it right to me.
Why not keep the element of surprise and wait until you're on board the senator's yacht before revealing this was all a trap to nab his military intel? So a senator's ship is attacked and crashes into a building on Coruscant, and not a single authority will show up to assess the situation, giving Cal enough time to go sightseeing around town before finding a way on board. Gameplay in Star Wars Jedi Survivor remains a balancing act that requires a volume-eating circus hill to carefully perch it on its nose. A mix of Souls-style combat with Uncharted-style platforming. The combat is very forgiving and for the most part easy, which makes one wonder why you would ape FromSoft style if you weren't aiming for challenging difficulty. Also borrowed from Souls-likes, levels loop around themselves and you have to meditate at select locations to level up and refill health charges. In every world, even the deserted ones you visit, have standardized the construction of zipline placement every few hundred meters back to the nearest meditation point in case you're feeling feeling overwhelmed. But when Cal is capable of climbing and jumping over everything in his path, it makes the whole notion of shortcuts seem as bizarre as enemies respawning after you meditate in this world. The juxtaposition of gameplay elements is akin to forcing a cat and dog to share a kennel. There's a lot of entertaining hissing and barking, but no harmony.
What took you so long?
Oh, you know, just hanging out, taking in the sights.
On one hand, that line is so authentically George Lucas it's almost endearing. On the other, well, it's just so authentically George Lucas you wish someone would have scribbled a better line in the script. If you look closely, the water making this surface slippery and making Cal eat shit every time he tries to climb up it is coming out of what seems like the seam connecting it to the building. It can't actually rain down here. This is the Undercity. There's a giant metal ceiling above them. A chunk of metal with a hint of hook catches Cal's eye, and within seconds he's repurposed it into a grappling gun. One must assume Cal always keeps his pockets full of spare parts for rebuilding junk he comes across that will help him advance through a level, while never deciding to build something ahead of time that might help him.
I have a daughter. Got it. I don't get to see her as often as I'd like, but at least I can provide for her.
Meet Bode. His personality trait is father, a trope so beaten to death in games that I yearn for a time when male characters were all chauvinists who didn't even need to speak, let alone worry about fatherhood. He talks about his daughter as if he's paid per mention. The moment a character introduces himself and flaunts his offspring, you know they're either headed for a tragic demise or a plot-twisting betrayal. All characters from the original game are accounted for by halftime, yet only Cal seems determined to live his life as a flea biting the back of the elephant that is the Empire, while his friends moved on to other things since they could read the writing on the wall. His current team is charged with obvious filling space until we die energy, so it's no real surprise when all but one of them make it out of this mission alive. There are grappling cables installed into Coruscant's infrastructure, apparently for snagging wayward vehicles, because what city planning really needs is more tripwires and harpoon guns. The ultimate objective of this high-stakes, death-defying mission on Coruscant is, drumroll please, to discover that the Galactic Empire is, in fact, galactic. Since when did the Empire, or any empire for that matter, hide their borders? The ninth sister from the previous game miraculously survived, only to be hurriedly squashed at the beginning of this one, like a bug you thought you stepped on but missed. All of Cal's team, excluding our fascinating friend Bode who is a father, get systematically wiped. Here's hoping that learning the Empire has a knack for colonialism is worth it. What exactly caused that ship to crash? Everyone, bar Bode and Cal, is pushing up daisies, and neither of them shot it down. One of the most bewildering conundrums in the game is your limitation to using only 2 lightsaber forms at any given time. Want to switch? Hike back to the meditation spot. It defies reason why you can't utilize more than 2 when Cal's Swiss Army lightsaber is perfectly capable of switching between all 5 styles. It doesn't seem like it would overpower you by being able to switch between styles anytime you like. Since they're all making their separate getaways, Cal hands Bode a locator beacon so they can reunite post-mission. He doesn't give one to the other surviving member of the team though, which clues you into that guy's impending fate. Considering Bode's impending betrayal and its purpose of gathering intel on Cal for eventual capture, this should logically be game over. Bode can now trace Cal's movements wherever he goes, but logic took a vacation. Bode has no idea about what Cal will get wrapped up in for the rest of the game, and therefore no reason to track him down to hang out later.
On my mark, hit the brakes. We'll drop behind.
The concept of aerodynamic space bricks is enough to shatter your mind and the laws of physics simultaneously. Weird how a second detachment of TIE fighters snuck up on them from the side of this long tunnel.
I'll peel off, draw a few away.
It's a tunnel, you can't peel any of them off. This is right after Cal got his current team slaughtered. BD decides this is the perfect moment to play movies of Cal's old team. You know, the one that left him high and dry. Nothing says healing like a well-timed film festival of your failures.
What do you think? Mara.
It's good. Could use some more salt.
Too much salt is bad for you.
Are we implying too much salt is as damaging for all sentient races as it is for humans? Or do aliens just like doling out free diet advice to other species?
Any ports nearby that won't turn us in for a reward? Yeah.
Well, somehow you landed the Mantis on Coruscant without any issues. You can't be too afraid of being caught if you're hot-dogging this known ship all over the galaxy. Cal decides to head for Koboh, where Grease settle down, in hopes of getting the Mantis' gyro repaired. Then crash lands there and doesn't damage more of the ship and require more than a gyro replacement.
Think you can pull a fast one on us?
It was all just a misunderstanding!
What exactly happened to all the alien languages in Star Wars? Everybody and their pet Wookiee speaks English in this game. It's a small thing, but it turns the cultural authenticity of the world into a farce. Plus, it gives birth to comic relief characters like Turgle, who'd be significantly less irritating if they were unintelligible. If Jar Jar Binks didn't speak English, he might have been a hit.
But mistakes like these cannot be tolerated. Let this be a reminder of what happens when you cross the Bedlam Raiders!
Rayvis is making a show fit for Broadway out of this, despite the audience consisting of his own men and Cal. It's pretty clear to me that most bloodthirsty warrior characters are just theater nerds.
Noble Jedi Knight, if you stay your hand, I shall withdraw in peace.
Rayvis is unironically the best character and villain in the game, and that's not just because he's voiced by Wesker's voice actor.
This is the one who stood up to the Bedlam Raiders!
Whose genius idea was it to reimagine the Pepe the Frog meme as a Star Wars character? It's a galaxy far, far away, not the internet.
I'm looking for an old friend. 4 arms, hairy, big mouth.
You can simply ask for Grease by name, you know. It's his bar, not some covert operation. Grease sends Cal into the smuggler tunnels beneath his bar to find a gyro among the scrap he keeps down there. Then BD kicks over a random can and causes the floor to collapse under them, because that's how you uncover a planetary mystery to set up the rest of the game's plot. Also, if a can can trigger a collapse, Grease might want to reconsider the structural integrity of his bar's location, because that is turning into a sinkhole in the future. Cal has a memory lapse and forgets the Force can snatch stuff out of the air like BD. Meanwhile, BD seems to have caught the amnesia bug and forgot he's got thrusters to fly with. Maybe they both need a refresher course on their user manuals. The Force is basically a Swiss Army knife, doing whatever it needs to do at any given moment to suit the writer's whims. But does it extend to recording Force echoes from a droid with about as much connection to the Force as my toaster? High Republic Jedi Centauri Kree wiped this droid's memory of how to navigate the Koboh Abyss, then sent it off on an important mission which coincidentally included waking up the one person the Jedi wouldn't want conscious in relation to the Koboh Abyss, and she herself left behind a device so the person she wanted the droid to wake up would be capable of navigating the Abyss. So what was the point of wiping the droid's memory of it? Maybe the Jedi Academy doesn't cover basic reasoning.
Tell me how to navigate the Koboh Abyss.
I have no information on that in my memory banks.
I never quite figured out why the Jedi developed such a complex over the Koboh Abyss. They treated this joint like it was Area 51 and they'd lost the keys. They abandoned it for centuries and erased its mentions from their Yelp reviews. And all for what? A failed Jedi real estate project.
Use that to open the forest array. Travel underground. Stop for no one. That is an order, Z.
But what was the plan once Z arrived at this destination? Centauri just told Z to scoot over there without much of an itinerary. If there was a specific task to be done, a tiny mention might have helped. But I guess that would have given away the grand reveal of V's to-do list, which included the task of waking up a hibernating dark Jedi. I've got no beef with puzzles, especially physics-based puzzles, but I do wonder why the Jedi would design a structure where you have to haul cables around like a dock worker and lob power balls into slots. Were they bored, or just hated their Padawans?
So Z, what's Tanalorr?
A planet hidden within the Koboh Abyss. It's home to a Jedi temple.
The Jedi built a temple on an extremely elusive planet inside the Koboh Abyss, then ditched it and wiped its existence off the map. The secrecy around it doesn't make much sense other than to create a hidey hole the Empire can't Google. Bode's back, despite being an Imperial agent with a handy tracker given to him by none other than Cal, the person he sent to apprehend. I'd love to sit in on those Imperial intelligence meetings. Catch that Jedi yet? Nah, let's see where he's off to next. Maybe he'll find a nice beach.
Master Centauri ordered me to open the forest array, but given my condition, I cannot fulfill that duty. Please. If I fail my mission, the key to Tanalorr may be lost forever.
Does it really matter now? That was centuries ago. Opening the forest array needed to happen back then. Apparently, a few centuries of neglect doesn't degrade unmaintained facilities and technology in the slightest. The forest array is surrounded by deadly particles that can only be shoved aside with lasers. These are the same particles that make up the Koboh Abyss Cal saw upon arriving. What it is and why it is the way it is never once explained. It exists to serve as a plot device for why there is at least one planet the Empire doesn't know about and can't reach. In light of this, I want to point out that both Yoda and Obi-Wan had no problem finding places where they could be left alone and didn't require ship-destroying nebulas to protect them. When it comes to single-player games, Respawn Entertainment takes the same approach to level design as it does with its PvP Battle Royale Apex Legends, meaning bizarre structures that exist solely for Cal to have something to hang on to or shimmy across. None of it ever comes across as natural or something someone would intentionally build. You'll come across ropes dangling in the middle of nowhere, structural supports that don't support anything and jut out at awkward angles, and at one point I ran into giant stone columns that somehow function as naturally occurring hydraulic systems that Cal can move with the Force to launch himself. Cal's memory seems to work like a faulty light bulb, flickering on just when the plot needs it. Oh yeah, I can control animal minds with the Force. Almost forgot there. Convenient amnesia has been Cal's superpower for 2 games. From here on out, every realtor in the game will now be waiting on Cal to show up just so we can fly him somewhere. It's like they've got no better job than being Cal's personal Uber. Also, this kind of paraglider gameplay may look fine in Zelda, but in Star Wars it looks downright goofy. 2 centuries ago, Centauri Kree sent her droid off to release the galaxy's worst long-term care patient. The Dark Jedi inside is not someone to release so casually, and she's the one who put him in there after all, and planned to release him even after he murdered several Jedi. In this vision of the past, Cal sees Tanalorr. You would think it was the Garden of Eden without taking Dagan Gera is with the place. But it just seems like another world in a galaxy full of planets to me. He's so taken by it that he convinces the Jedi Order to build a temple here. And after they abandon it after it's raided by marauders, he throws a dark side tantrum because his real estate investment collapsed. Of all the dark side origin stories, his might be the most mundane and somewhat believable. I gotta question the wisdom of the back-to-tank setup here. Releasing Dagan Gera is one thing, but giving him his lightsaber back upon release seems like a uniquely bad idea after he murdered several Jedi with it.
Not until the Jedi Council gave the order to abandon Tanalorr and then refused to counterattack.
They gave up on it?
Yes. It was my discovery, my home, and they just expected me to throw it away?
Dagan Gera throws a tantrum over a Jedi Order that doesn't even exist anymore. He even takes the time to turn his lightsaber red for the full dramatic effect before trying to kill Cal, who did nothing to him. A guy who could barely stand a minute ago due to centuries in a back-to-tank can now duel Cal to a standstill.
Ah, Ravis. I should have known you would honor your oath.
Ravis has an uncanny sense of timing, showing up like this was planned between him and Dagan centuries ago. There's a lot of holes in that setup. First, Ravis was imprisoned by the Jedi after his attack on Tanalorr and was only recently freed after the Jedi were destroyed. He would have had no idea what happened to Dagan Gera after that, and would certainly have no reason to think his old friend was still alive, or that this is where he was being held.
If anyone knows about a lost Jedi world, it's Cere.
Cal decides I need to see Cere next, because she's obviously the encyclopedia of her lost Jedi worlds. She didn't even know what her own master did with a list of Force-sensitive children in the last game.
We eagerly await your arrival. However, a dust storm is sweeping over our location. It is too dangerous for your ship to land.
How will I get to you?
Master Junda has arranged for an escort who will guide you to us.
I don't buy the idea that a sandstorm can keep a starship from landing closer to base. Space is a much more inhospitable environment than a desert. Later, this ship is going to fly through a nebula that destroys everything it touches. Sand, on the other hand, just gets everywhere. Honestly, Cal should really be complaining about the dangers of being a ginger in the desert without sunblock. Cal's goth girlfriend Merrin proves that the Night Sisters curriculum is much more practical than either the light or dark sides of the Force. She can repair anything, from walls to bridges, with what can only be described as a Star Wars version of the Harry Potter spell Reparo. Accepting help isn't a sign of weakness. Just because someone offers you a hand doesn't mean you're any less independent. I know the writers know this lesson, because they beat it into Cal's head for 2 games. This dust storm took its sweet time to hit. Cal could have landed the Mantis at Cere's base and enjoyed a cup of blue milk instead of trudging there on foot.
I think we might have found something special. A place where the Empire can't find us. But it would mean leaving the fight. And well, the fight is all I know.
Cal. Look into the fire. It will warm you. Keep you company on dark, lonesome nights, yes? But left unchecked, it will consume everything in its path.
Just imagine if Merrin ever met Luke. The Empire would have been safe and sound, with Luke deciding to stick to moisture farming.
It's an honor. I never thought I'd meet you in person.
Neither did I, because I thought he was dead. Eno Cordova, the Jedi whose trail you followed in the first game, and who was supposed to be dead is actually alive and working with Cere. Also, Merrin must have wanted Cordova to be a surprise for Cal, because she never mentioned him while leading Cal to the Hidden Path base. The Mantis' arrival coincides with Cal's, meaning he could have waited in the ship instead of trekking through the desert and nearly being killed several times by stormtroopers.
You're rebuilding the temple archives.
We're trying. As long as this knowledge remains, the legacy of the Jedi survives.
So where did you get all these Jedi archives from? The first game revolved around a single holocron of Force-sensitive children that was hidden away by Cordova. Yet you just simply have all the lost Jedi knowledge at your fingertips now?
I found no information related to crossing the Koboh abyss. However, I found 2 mentions of this Dagan Gera. He had a retreat on Koboh, and records show him frequently visiting a laboratory on its moon.
The Jedi archives contain no mention of how to cross the Koboh abyss, but does mention Dagan Gera visiting a laboratory on the moon orbiting Koboh. Like every other High Republic installation, the longevity of Dagan Gera's moon lab rivals that of a Twinkie. 2 centuries, 0 maintenance, and it's still running. Bode, clearly not a fan of Sun Tzu, decides to arm his future enemy with a blaster. How exactly is Cal breathing here? He's standing on the outside of this lunar space station and clearly exposed to vacuum. Also, gravity in space works no differently here than it does on the surface. You still have to make your way Uncharted style in what should be a low-gravity environment. Cal finds a broken device on a table and instantly knows it's significant in his search for Tanalorr. His Jedi powers now apparently include Antiques Roadshow appraisal skills. A mercenary with a hilted lightsaber attacks Cal, which Cal uses to modify his own lightsaber after defeating the guy. In this game's logic, a hilted saber is the heavy-hitting, slow-moving weapon, which takes about a second of thought to realize makes no sense. As with every lightsaber, the blade is just a beam of plasma. Its weight would be so negligible that you wouldn't even feel it. So why does it need a wind-up to swing like it's heavy? And it's still a lightsaber blade. They all cut through anything they touch. So why is this the high-damage saber?
Oh, nicely done!
Space Australians. May the force be with you, mate.
So what do you want?
What I want, Cal, is to reward you for every one of these that you take down.
Cage takes the holocron off the bounty hunter Cal just killed and tells him to retrieve them from bounty hunters he kills to trade with her for rewards. So now Cal has to travel back to the cantina to trade the holocron she just tossed him for a reward rather than getting it right here.
Everybody's got rockets except me.
Is there something stopping you from getting a jetpack? You could take the jetpack off the bounty hunter you just killed, like you took the hilted lightsaber from the mercenary earlier. The Jedi built a base of operations in the middle of a volcanic area, and even separated the areas with huge ravines that one had to fly over to access. All this may go some way to explaining why Dagan Gera was so obsessed with Tanalorr. He simply wanted an office he wouldn't have to hang off a flying dinosaur to reach. The Force continues to double as an omniscient security camera, as Cal receives a vision of Dagan Gera murdering 2 Jedi for busting up some important machinery that can lead you to Tanalorr. If the Jedi didn't want Tanalorr anymore, why not allow others to use it? They seem like they just wanted to really spite Dagan Gera for no real reason.
Good. They don't know about the safe house.
Yet.
Safe house?
Hidden in the ruins. Have we begun evacuations?
They're already underway, but Brother Armias isn't responding.
Armias has the communication codes.
If they capture him, they could put the entire hidden path at risk.
The vital contact codes that could destroy the hidden path were entrusted to a random dude in a refugee camp, because nothing screams secure location like a place with 0 security.
We will take the back route. It is the fastest way.
The fastest route is the back way when you're staring at the front entrance? That's like saying the quickest way to your front door is through your neighbor's backyard.
Let's split up. I will slow their progress. We'll regroup near the temple.
I'll go slow their progress down by warping directly to where the stormtroopers are, while you waste time running around this canyon, turning on wind chimes so you can create a tornado inside a cave, also you can reach the same location I'm headed to, and can take you along by warping you there with me like I will start doing right after this section. Sounds suspiciously like someone just wanted to make Cal do some cardio. Cal's Jedi therapy sessions must have worked wonders, because he's no longer suffering PTSD from the purge of the Jedi like he was in the last game, but he keeps having all these flashbacks to his friends when they were all still together between games before suddenly remembering one of the Force abilities he could have been doing this entire time. And what's more, he's now reunited with all of his friends, so why do these nostalgic flashbacks keep happening? These temple puzzles really are something. Need to open a door? Better get ready to play Jedi Tetris with some metal frames and do a bit of Force Pilates with ropes. Can't a guy just press a button? The Empire's huge spider robot crushes Armias without causing any rubble despite it sticking its foot through the stone roof of this underground location. The rubble only comes down after the foot is removed, forcing Cal to act as an impromptu support beam.
Take this. Go through quickly.
And why didn't you give Cal this medallion that lets him use your portals and pass through energy barriers earlier? This Star Wars game suddenly turned into Metal Gear Rising.
Bode and I were able to find some interesting data in the archives.
I guess Cordova only checked the first result when he searched the archives for Tanalorr previously, because now he's found tons of data about it.
Despite my efforts, those compasses you brought me were beyond repair. However, records indicate that 3 were unaccounted for.
So you're saying one might still be out there?
Yes, and Dagan sent his army to look for it.
If Dagan manages to get a compass, he can return to Tanalorr. Okay, so he would end up with some nice real estate. That doesn't exactly mean much when the Empire is out there controlling the rest of the galaxy. Since they returned to Koboh with no plan on how to move forward with the compass issue, the game provides them with one. Raiders broke into the cantina and swiped Z while they were away, so now they have to go rescue her. That metal grating Cal is climbing on is being energized, but only locally, with none of the current traveling more than a meter from the origin point. This is a white force field, so that means Cal can't phase through it with Merrin's talisman, I guess, because he can't get past it, only green ones. Ravis heard Cal shimmying between loading gates and punched through a steel wall, yet somehow didn't crush Cal like a bug with that same force. BD somehow managed to send this crate flying into Ravis and knock him through a wall. There was no way little BD had the force to push it off the ledge it was resting on. What's more, the angle is all wrong. The crate was directly above Ravis, yet hit him from the side. Cal has another flashback and recalls that he can use the force to pull things toward the ground or lift them up. Moving things telekinetically along both the X and Y axis seems like pretty basic Jedi stuff.
You. Activate the forest array. Go to the shattered moon. I know where Centauri hid the last compass.
Grabbing V and questioning her was pointless then, since you already have an objective marker pointing you to where the compass is located.
The tuner is mine! The droid is mine! Tanalorr is mine!
Dagan Gera doesn't flirt with the dark side. He's gone full libertarian. Just a man standing up against government overreach, his rights to his property, and pesky Jedi regulations. Bo demonstrates amazing catch and carry skills during the rescue. He could have just airlifted Cal to each objective from the start. It would have saved us so much cardio. Instead of joining Z and Bode in their escape pod, Cal decides to take a solitary joyride and a separate one. Maybe he just needed some alone time. Merrin throws an invisibility cloak around the Mantis using Night Sister magic. It's a good thing those nearby raiders weren't wearing their glasses or using basic sensors, as they failed to spot the big ship in plain sight they were flying towards before she performed the ritual. Cal stumbles into a vision of Centauri disarming Dagan, literally, adding another chapter to the Star Wars Amputee Chronicles. Only problem is that judging from the angle and direction of her attack, she would have cut his arm off around the elbow, but Dagan's arm was severed directly below the shoulder joint, a very difficult place to sever without cutting Dagan's torso in half in the process.
Where is the compass?
Centauri Kree's Observatory, as Dagan suspected.
Dagan and Ravis are quite certain there's a compass in Centauri's observatory. Normally, you would offer the audience an explanation for how they know this. If they knew this the entire time, then there's no reason for why they haven't retrieved it already and headed to Tanalorr. According to Dagan, he needed this lunar array online to access the observatory back on Koboh. Except I see no reason for that. The observatory is just a floating base in the sky. Instead of conveniently flying the Mantis to Centauri's observatory, the crew decide to land back at the cantina, subjecting Cal to another tedious trek. Rick the door technician, a joke so good you can bet they'll recycle it in the third game. Brace for Rick the window engineer, Rick the roof plumber, and Rick the ventilation consultant. The Empire turns up on Koboh for a scuffle with the raiders over this facility, and I'm left wondering if they just wanted in on the fun, or if they have a valid reason. I don't think they know yet about Dagan Gera. They just wanted to fight raiders over nothing.
Seek me out. Or go to Tanalorr.
Centauri left Dagan a post-arm chop voicemail, telling him to either find her or sod off to Tanalorr, essentially nullifying the point of cutting off his arm and stopping him in the first place. She was sending some mixed signals. Dagan's new party trick is wielding a Jedi ghost arm, and it's odd that he's never considered a prosthetic hand. Let me just run closer while shooting ranged weapons. That way I get within lightsaber range. Luckily for Bode, he simply vanishes from the fight for some reason instead of being killed by Dagan.
I feel it. Loss. Suffering. Shame.
I think Dagan is getting a trauma boner from Cal's emotions. Why else just walk around when he could kill him? Cal morphs into a black woman, a common fate for redheads in casting recently. Specifically, he becomes Centauri, all part of his special ability to connect with the past. Or perhaps he's simply a really committed method actor.
But someday, someone's gonna have to face the Empire. Why not us?
Someone has to face the Empire, they say. Why not us, they say. I counter with, why not someone more important? Despite being a skilled engineer and a genius at repairing tech, Cal decides that only Cordova can fix the compass. Meanwhile, he roasts marshmallows by the campfire and shares heartfelt moments with Merrin and Bode. Obviously, nothing bad is about to happen.
We did it.
Bode times his betrayal with the precision of a Swiss watch. Just as Cordova completes his compass do-it-yourself repair, the alarm goes off as the Empire shows up. Cordova is a Jedi, right? I mean, surely he can use some force powers or whip out a lightsaber to protect himself against Bode. This guy survived the Purge, after all. Bode guns down Cordova in cold blood. Because why just run when you can run and commit murder? For all the flash and fire, that was one ineffective frag grenade. Cal comes out unscathed even though he was practically hugging the thing. Bode hops on a speeder and flees into the desert, and I have no idea where he's off to, since he left his own ship back on Koboh and hitched a ride with Cal on the Mantis. Cal is holding onto that ass with the firm grip of a Jedi who knows his priorities. Turns out Bode is a former Jedi who also survived the Purge. Subtitling this game Survivor seems a bit counterintuitive given how many Jedi survivors there are these days. How exactly did Bode get his ship here? He left that back on Koboh after using it to assault the Observatory. With Cal out of commission, you take control of Cere, fighting the Empire to give the Hidden Path time to evacuate. At one point, you had to stop attacking walkers with the base's defenses, which are so comically stupid they would be more at home in a Tears of the Kingdom shrine puzzle than actual defensive measures. They require a walker to stand with the precision of a ballerina while an explosive ball saunters down an incline toward them.
First, I need to get back to the archive.
The Hidden Path contact codes.
The contact codes in the archives again. Have you guys never heard of digitizing this stuff for easy transfer? This is a universe that can only send files on their equivalent of USB sticks. Cere leaves Grease and Marin waiting in the hangar for her return, which she never does, so the Empire should have found these two and killed them. Cere leaps at Vader again, clearly forgetting the lesson from the last time she tried that move. Vader, with all of his legendary force sensitivity, somehow doesn't sense Cal walk in as he leaves. I thought you guys were supposed to wait for Cere to return. Also, did the Empire stop its attack and go home without first making sure they cleared out this base and took every bit of intel? Because they're gone now and Cal even had time to wrap Cere and Cordova's bodies.
Why couldn't we sense him?
He deceived us all.
No, I still should have been able to.
Now that's enough!
Grease interrupts Cal because he sensed an unexplained plot hole. Bode left the locator beacon Cal gave him earlier to find the Mantis on, so they're able to track him to an Imperial intelligence base where his daughter is kept, and the Mantis can just land in the hangar of an Imperial spy base without first getting clearance or coming under attack. Why would there be a big hole in the ceiling of a base commander's office for someone to jump down from?
Get on the comms and call off the base alert.
Will that work? I mean, you did leave a trail of bodies all the way to his office.
Bode lured you here to destroy me!
Bode lured Cal here to act as a diversion while he fled with his daughter, but the base was just placed on high alert while Cal was making his way through it, which doesn't strike me as the best time to escape when everyone would be on high alert, and Bode didn't even take the opportunity to escape during that. Also, this plan relied on Cal surviving Jedi, which there was no promise of given that Darth Vader showed up to deal with things personally. Cal dresses in Dinvik's uniform so he can pass undetected like he isn't the most wanted man in the Empire right now. Also, Dinvik's unconscious body disappears from his office after Cal strips him. That lightsaber reappeared on Cal's hip only when Bode walked through the door. He didn't have it on him until now so as not to give away his identity.
The first time I held her, I saw the entire galaxy in her eyes. You can't understand.
Through sheer overuse, video games have made being a father and all the accompanying drama and difficulties that come with it played out in cliché. Cal halts in his tracks to give Bode and his daughter a head start. Strangely, they take a hard left past the door that leads into a straight hallway. After convincing Cere to not give in to the dark side inside of her at the end of the previous game, it becomes Cal's devil trigger move for no real reason after his confrontation with Bode. Marin talks Cal down, but he can still use the dark side as a power anytime I want to kill everyone around him. Back in the Observatory, Bode took Santori's holocron recording and Dagan's lightsaber. In her final message to Dagan, Santori told him of two ways to reach Tanalorr. First with a compass she left him, and the other by aiming the Koboh arrays at certain coordinates in the abyss to create a tunnel through it. This was a message Bode was just going to leave on this Imperial intelligence base after fleeing with his daughter to the supposed safe haven of Tanalorr, as if they would never search his belongings for clues to where he might have gone. I'm very underwhelmed with how inconsequential both of these games are. The first was about finding a list of Force-sensitive children and a dead race of Force-sensitive aliens, and the sequel comes down to making sure a single father doesn't get to keep prime real estate. How does Tanalorr get any sunlight if it's contained within this nebula?
Better?
Sure, much better now that you've done witchcraft in front of a scared and frightened child. We just saw a shot of this empty balcony. In the very next shot of it, Bode is there and walking towards the exit.
This planet will be a haven for those hunted by the Empire, including Kata and you.
Your completely fair and rational offer is just going too far. How is your daughter in so much danger that you would go this far? She seems like an ordinary girl to me. You're the former Jedi. It seems to me you're the only one in danger who needs to hide from the Empire. If she's that important to you, staying away from her might be a better choice. Isn't this whole embracing the dark side with none of the moral drawbacks kind of proving that the Sith are more or less right about it? Even with Bode going into crazy overprotective dad mode, his daughter would probably still resent Cal for killing him, especially since he had him beat, but she's remarkably fine after this.